Every Rock Band game uses an in-house scripting language called data array, or DTA for short, to control different parts of the game, from UI elements to gameplay settings and many things in between. DTA in Rock Band 3 and prior games is very versatile, allowing for mods to have lots of new features not originally present in those games. DTA in Rock Band 4 is not as useful, being mostly reserved for the game's internal gameplay and screen drawing configurations. Most of the UI elements are no longer directly controlled by DTA, instead being set in the new scene and entity files, which we do not have a very good understanding of how these work at this time. There's one UI element still mainly controlled by DTA, and there's one that was brought over from Rock Band 3, the overshell. The overshell is the little bar at the bottom of the screen in the menus which handles your player's specific settings. It also acts as this game's pause menu, allowing you to change settings without pausing the game for everyone else and quitting out of the song. Having the overshell as a known way to create new menus that the player can interact with and change new settings is great, but DTA's limitations in Rock Band 4 were slowly catching up as more features were added to Rock Band 4 Deluxe. Rock Band 4 Deluxe works in a very different way to other Deluxe mods, relying on a plugin to have external files overwrite the ones built into the game's package file. Every other Deluxe mod changes the game's ARC files directly. ARC files are kind of like an encrypted zip file, except it requires special tooling to create. The plugin actually makes it more similar to the RB Enhanced projects in that it hooks directly into the game's code and modifies it to make it do things the original programmers never intended it to do. This allows Rock Band 4 Deluxe to do more things instead of just being locked to modifying scripts and other game assets. The plugin gives Rock Band 4 Deluxe a lot more freedom to modify the game without having to repack the ARC files, which is something we don't actually know how to do for Rock Band 4. And since some assets are reloaded at some point in time during gameplay, usually when switching menus, making modifications can sometimes be done without even restarting the game. Unfortunately, making these modifications available as options accessible in-game seemed pretty much impossible, as DTA doesn't have any way to move, copy, or create compiled game asset files. It does have the ability to delete files though, so I decided to make optional additions, modifications that required moving or copying files that would be included in the main Rock Band 4 Deluxe download, which people could enable by manually copying them to the right folder on their console, and could disable them when they wanted to in-game in the Deluxe settings menu. From the start, I knew optional additions weren't a great way to go about these kind of features, as most people likely wouldn't take the time to do stuff manually outside of the game. Eventually, I ran out of things that I could add to Rock Band 4 Deluxe without the ability to copy files, and as the number of optional additions started to pile up, I decided to dig into adding some code into the plugin to give DTA the ability to copy files myself. All DTA functions must be defined in the main C++ code of Rock Band 4, so all I needed to do to find the right place to put the hook is search for the text representation of one of the common DTA functions. That's the easy part. Actually creating new functions from that hook still requires finding a couple more things that weren't as simple to find. The next thing I needed from the game's code was the function used to actually register the text as a valid DTA function. I thought it was simply the function with the DTA function's text as an argument, but that failed to get new DTA functions running in-game after hooking into it. Some clever people in MiloHax recognized that what I had incorrectly labeled as the DTA registration function was actually the symbol constructor, which essentially takes a text string and adds it to a list the game can more quickly reference. But nothing else in the initialization function looked like it could possibly be the registration function. That's because unbeknownst to me, this code had the registration function inlined. Inlining is a way that a compiler can optimize the code to run faster, by merging sections of code together into one big function instead of calling a bunch of smaller ones. Inlining has a very unfortunate side effect of making reverse engineering way more difficult to pull off. I'd have to either perfectly recreate what the inline registration function did, or keep looking and hope that it was found elsewhere in the code not inlined. After searching for other DTA functions in the code, we found multiple uses of an uninlined version of data register func. Thankfully, it seems that the inlining optimization was done on a per-file basis of the original source code, so some smaller parts were unaffected. After making those adjustments to the locations, I finally got the game to output something to a log when I ran my new function. Oh my god. Oh. The final thing I needed was a way to retrieve the function arguments from DTA and bring them into the plugin. Thankfully, the game has a function to evaluate arguments from a data array. Unfortunately, the function still didn't work correctly. It simply crashed Rock Band 4 when it was run. Test. Oh no, it crashed. Something was going wrong with the evaluation. I ended up trying to use a different but similar function to evaluate the array. It stopped the crashing, but still didn't work. I decided to temporarily remove all the code I intended to use and replace it with extra logging, where I found that the text arguments were definitely not right. I was just seeing garbage data. This garbage data was due to the code inaccurately pointing to the wrong data due to ABIs. An ABI, or Application Binary Interface, is essentially the low-level version of an API, or Application Programming Interface. Basically, an API is used to allow multiple programs to talk to each other, while an ABI is used to allow the program to more easily talk to the computer's hardware itself. My knowledge on ABIs is very limited, as it's a pretty complicated thing that I thought the compiler would handle for me. If I wanted my code to match what Harmonix originally wrote it as, I would have to rewrite the plugin entirely in a different language that supported the ABIs used in Rock Band 4. Instead, I decided to use Ghidra's inaccurate decompiled code signatures as the code signatures used for evaluate and my DTA function to force the compiled code to be ABI compliant. At least for PS4. Finally, it worked. Alright, almost. Ooh, that's not good. Turns out, evaluate fails if the text argument has a space in it. I got past this hurdle by using a different function in Rock Band 4 that forced the data node into a symbol. Okay. Refresh. Refresh. Okay. Now it works. With all of those things done, the basis for many of Rock Band 4 Deluxe's modern features was finally in place. From better calibration options, to HUD positioning, and almost all of the rest of Rock Band 4 Deluxe's customization options. All of that was in some way based off the work done to make DTA more versatile in Rock Band 4. Thank you everybody for watching. I hope you learned something new, and even if you didn't, I hope you enjoyed watching the video. If there's anything else you'd like to know about how this was done, or if you would like a video on some other Deluxe modifications, feel free to leave a comment. I'm Lizix. Peace out.